Imagine stepping into a classroom.
Yeah.
And it's not just desks and a whiteboard, right? It's this vibrant mosaic, a real mix of cultures, languages, backgrounds, all in one place. Today, being a teacher means so much more than just delivering the curriculum. It's really about, cultivating these inclusive, respectful climates, making sure every single learner feels genuinely seen, truly valued. And here's where we get into today's deep dive, how physical education, PE, gym class, can actually be this incredibly powerful tool, often overlooked, I think, for building things like tolerance and intercultural competence. And not just in students, which you might expect, but crucially, in the people training to become teachers.
That's exactly right. Our focus today is this really insightful seminar paper. It comes from the Levinsky-Wingate Academic Center in Israel. And it explores these, sometimes surprising ways that PE teachers in training develop these vital skills, often before they even lead their own class.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack that. How do these practical PE courses actually build this intercultural readiness in future teachers, especially when there aren't always explicit cultural lessons involved? What does it mean for education overall? Okay, let's get into it. So first off, let's set the scene. Classrooms everywhere, globally, are more diverse than ever. You've got globalization, immigration, just the way societies naturally shift. Schools are like these little microcosms of the world. And yeah, this diversity brings amazing opportunities for learning, but let's be honest, it also presents real challenges. Teachers have this huge task, right? Not just teaching math or history, but creating spaces where every kid feels they belong.
Precisely. And this is exactly why PE is, uniquely positioned for what we sometimes call social learning. Think about it. It's different from a standard academic class where kids might be at desks, maybe working alone. PE demands movement, cooperation, solving problems together in real time, often with less rigid rules than, say, a science lab. This creates these organic spaces, places where students aren't just building physical skills, they're building empathy, trust, teamwork, especially with peers who might come from totally different backgrounds. It's very much learning by doing together.
Yeah, the paper actually shares this really powerful story that brings that to life. The author talks about their fourth-year internship. It was at a school in Israel called Keshet HaTikva, which is an integrated state school. So religious and secular students learning side by side. And the author noticed, outside the gym, sometimes there were visible social divides, differences in lifestyle, worldview. But then in a well-run PE game, they saw observing kids, some wearing kippot and tzitzit, passing a ball, planning moves with secular peers, cheering each other on, literally bridging these pretty significant social gaps that might exist elsewhere. The paper calls it PE's bridging capacity to create authentic common ground. That really paints a picture, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And that kind of natural interaction really highlights two key ideas we should define. First is tolerance. Now, UNESCO defined this back in 2017. It's not just passively putting up with difference. It demands active respect, even appreciation. Then there's intercultural competence, or IC. Deardorff described it back in '06. It's basically the mix of knowledge, attitudes, and communication skills you need to interact effectively, appropriately with people from other cultures. And the thing is, both of these are just critical skills today, not just for students navigating the world, but maybe even more so for the teachers guiding them.
And that's the pivot, isn't it? Because a lot of research looks at kids developing these skills, but this paper does something different. It steps back. It looks at a really critical earlier stage to the teacher education process itself. How are we preparing the teachers of tomorrow and today? It's not about the students in this study. It's about the teachers.
Exactly. The study aims specifically to examine how these multicultural practical PE courses right there at Levinsky-Wingate contributed to the tolerance and intercultural competence of these pre-service teachers. They really focused on the perceptions of the student teachers themselves. How did they experience diversity in these courses? It was exploratory, looking for patterns, seeing what emerged.
Okay, so how do they actually measure something like intercultural competence? It sounds tricky.
Well, their approach was pretty insightful and actually quite direct. They used an anonymous online questionnaire, sent it out to undergraduate PE students who'd taken at least one of these multicultural practical courses. So things like gymnastics, basketball, soccer, even outdoor ed. And the key thing, these weren't just theory classes. They used peer teaching formats. So the future teachers were actually practicing teaching each other in these diverse groups. A really clever setup.
Right, simulating the real thing.
Yeah.
And the questionnaire itself, what kinds of things did it ask?
It covered 5 main areas, which are pretty common in intercultural education research. They looked at communication and collaboration, how comfortable were they working across different backgrounds, cultural awareness and learning, did they feel they learned about other cultures just through the activities, mutual respect and identity, did they feel respected, and was there a respectful atmosphere? Emotional comfort, were they generally at ease, or were there anxieties? And finally, professional development. How did this all link back to their future teaching? They used a standard 5-point scale, strongly disagree to strongly agree, and they smartly mixed positive and negative phrasing to get a more balanced view.
That makes sense. Avoids just getting rote answers. And I found this part really interesting, the design-based inference idea. It sounds a bit academic, but can you break that down? What does it mean for how they interpreted the results?
Yeah, it's a key part of their approach. Essentially, instead of comparing different groups of people, like, say, students from different religious backgrounds, they focused on the teaching methods themselves, the pedagogical mechanisms built into the course structure. They looked for things like equal status teamwork, having shared goals, needing to solve problems together cooperatively, elements that other research has shown work well in diverse school PE settings. So the idea was to see how the design of the course, the way it was structured, influenced intercultural readiness, regardless of who is in the room. It's about the how of the teaching.
Okay, so the focus is on the course structure itself. So what did they find? What were the results?
Well, even though it was a small sample, just 9 students responded, an overall picture was pretty clear. These practical PE courses really did seem to provide very fertile ground for intercultural encounters among these future teachers.
Right, let's dig into the details then. What about that first category, communication and collaboration?
Right, getting into the nitty-gritty. For communication and collaboration, the average score was high, 4.18 out of 5. Participants consistently said they felt comfortable working with peers from different cultural backgrounds. The shared movement, the need to cooperate physically on tasks, it just seemed to make collaboration easier. It sort of naturally broke down barriers that might exist in a more traditional desk-based setting.
Okay, so collaboration felt easy.
Yeah.
Did that actually translate into learning about other cultures?
It seems so. For cultural learning and awareness, the average was 3.83, still quite strong. Students indicated, moderate to high levels of learning. Many said they understood classmates' backgrounds better just by doing activities together. It really suggests that this practical PE environment works as this informal but pretty meaningful place for intercultural learning. It happens alongside the physical skills. Learning by doing, not just by talking about it.
Interesting. Now, this next one stood out, emotional discomfort or avoidance. Lowest score, 2.11. So most students didn't feel discomfort, which is great. But the paper mentions a small minority, maybe 1 or 2, did feel some hesitation expressing themselves across cultural lines. What's the takeaway there?
I think that's a really crucial point. It highlights that psychological safety isn't automatic, even in a generally positive environment. While the courses were largely successful in creating comfort, this small finding reminds us there's always work to do. We need to ensure everyone feels not just accepted, but genuinely comfortable sharing their perspective without holding back. It's a subtle but really important detail for educators designing these experiences.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's not just about not feeling bad, but actively feeling safe to contribute fully. What about respect and identity?
For respect and identity, the average was 3.75. So again, pretty positive. Participants generally felt their own cultural identities were acknowledged and respected. They felt there was an atmosphere of mutual respect during group work. They even mentioned staff expectations helped reinforce that. However, the study did note that feeling free to voice culturally distinct opinions seemed a bit less consistent. So respect was there, yes, but maybe that deeper level of active cultural expression needed more nurturing.
Okay. And finally, how did all this affect their view of themselves as future teachers? Professional development and future outlook.
That was another strong area, a mean score of 4.0. Students widely felt this multicultural learning experience really boosted their confidence and their teaching skills overall. And significantly, many explicitly said they were interested in getting involved in more intercultural initiatives in the future. So it suggests these courses aren't just impacting them now, they're shaping a more inclusive professional outlook for their careers. They see the value because they've lived it.
So if we pull all that together, it really seems these practical PE courses work as a surprisingly effective platform. They foster engagement, respect, skills, and often without needing formal lessons about culture. It's like the learning is embedded in the activity itself, almost happening organically.
Exactly. And if you connect this to the broader research landscape, it really fits. International studies, from places like Spain, Puerto Rico, the US, they've consistently shown that sport-based education, with its emphasis on teamwork and shared goals in diverse groups, genuinely supports respect and social cohesion. This idea of physical activity as a bridge builder, it's pretty well established globally. This paper adds a nice piece to that puzzle, specifically looking at preparing the teachers.
And I think one of the most fascinating points, the real nuance here, is what you mentioned earlier. These Wingate courses didn't have explicit intercultural discussions, no separate module on diversity dialogue. Instead, they relied on strong teaching routines, equal status groups, shared tasks, peer feedback, collaboration being the norm. And the paper hints that maybe this lack of spotlighting culture actually helped. It let students just experience diversity as normal, part of getting the task done, rather than making it a topic. It's sort of normalized inclusion.
Which brings us to the strategic importance of what they call this upstream focus, focusing on teacher education. Think about it. If student teachers show they can navigate diversity well in these simulated lessons designed to mimic real school situations, then it stands to reason they'll be better prepared to apply those same inclusive approaches in their actual classrooms later. It means teacher ed programs can fine-tune their course designs, maybe tweak group roles, add reflection prompts before teachers hit their practicum. It's proactive, equipping them with skills early, not just leaving it to trial and error once they're in schools. It's about building that foundation first.
So, translating this into action, what are the practical takeaways for teacher education programs? What should they be doing based on this?
Well, several clear recommendations come through. First, simply leverage the strengths you already have. Programs need to recognize that the structured cooperation in their practical courses isn't just teaching PE skills, it's actively building intercultural readiness. That's a core benefit, and it should be acknowledged, maybe even highlighted.
Okay, recognize what's already working. What else?
Second, consider light touch reflection. So maybe full-on seminars about culture feel forced in this practical setting. But short, guided moments, a quick check-in at the end of class, maybe structured peer sharing could help students articulate what they're learning culturally. It helps them process the experience without disrupting that organic feel that seems to work so well.
Makes sense. Small tweaks, not huge overhauls.
Exactly. And third, maybe adapt elements from other successful models. For instance, consciously introduce some culturally diverse games from around the world, or explicitly rotate leadership roles within groups to give everyone a chance to lead across differences. Again, subtle enhancements to deepen the intercultural aspect without changing the core structure.
Right. And the final point seems crucial.
Yes, finally, the big one is prepare students upstream. Embed this kind of intercultural focus into pre-service courses right from the start. The goal is that new teachers walk into their first classroom already equipped with strategies for building inclusive PE environments. It's about being proactive, setting them up for success in diverse settings right from day one.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it really hammers home this powerful idea, doesn't it? Physical education is so much more than just exercise or sports. It's this vital social space where cooperation, respect, intercultural understanding, they can be actively grown, almost woven into the fabric of the activity.
And it leaves us with a really interesting question to ponder, I think. If structured physical activity focused on shared goals and equal roles can build these bridges so organically in teacher training, what wider lessons does that hold for designing learning environments across all subjects, all ages? Especially maybe in situations where talking explicitly about culture is difficult or maybe just less effective than letting people learn through shared experience like this.
Absolutely. It's a great thought to leave with. The ultimate message here, really, for teacher education programs and beyond, seems crystal clear. When you design these practical courses thoughtfully, with inclusion in mind, you're preparing future educators to navigate diversity with confidence and creativity. And in our world today, these increasingly pluralistic societies we live in, that ability to foster inclusion, it's not just a nice-to-have skill. It is absolutely an essential professional competence.